Let's jump right into this explainer because we're about to uncover something kind of mind-blowing. Have you ever wondered why every single time you try to save money, it feels incredibly hard? Well, it turns out you are literally fighting against millions of years of human survival instincts. We're going to break down the exact biological mechanisms that make saving feel like, honestly, a physical punishment to your nervous system. And better yet, we'll walk through the specific psychological hacks you can use to trick your brain into building wealth. We beat ourselves up all the time for lacking discipline, right? Like, oh, I just can't stick to a budget. I have terrible willpower. But the truth, it's completely different. Your brain is this magnificent, highly tuned machine, perfectly optimized for running away from predators and foraging for food, not for managing a 401k. Its reward system was built for a world that, quite frankly, just doesn't exist anymore. And this right here perfectly highlights the core issue. You are essentially trying to navigate modern, hyper-complex financial markets using ancient biological software. Think of it like trying to run the newest smartphone operating system on a clunky computer from the 1990s. There are going to be some massive compatibility issues, and honestly, recognizing those glitches is the very first step to outsmarting them. So, here's the game plan for this explainer. First, we'll look at the hunter-gatherer trap, then dive into hyperbolic discounting, followed by 3 tricks to bypass your biology, meeting your future self, gamifying your savings, and finally, automating and hiding it. All right, part 1, the hunter-gatherer trap. Let's see how the intense scarcity our ancestors lived through created a massive dopamine trap for us today. This is wild when you think about it. For 99% of human history, we were hunter-gatherers. If you stumbled across a huge bush of calorie-dense berries, you didn't have a fridge to save them for next week, right? The absolute most logical thing you could do was eat them immediately. So your brain evolved to reward you with a huge rush of dopamine, that amazing pleasure chemical, whenever you acquired resources on the spot. Fast forward to today, and money represents those resources. When you see something you want, your brain anticipates that ancient survival reward, that little thrill you get pulling out your credit card, or the rush of hitting buy now on your phone. That is the exact same biological dopamine hit our ancestors got from finding food. But on the flip side, think about what happens when you try to save. Logically, your modern brain absolutely knows you need money for retirement. But biologically, your primitive lizard brain looks at cash just sitting in a bank account and sees useless hoarding for a tomorrow that might not actually happen. By not spending right now, you are cutting off that dopamine supply. So your ancient brain literally interprets the act of saving money as you intentionally starving yourself. No wonder it feels awful. Moving on to section 2. Hyperbolic discounting explained. This survival mechanism creates a major cognitive bias that completely sabotages our modern financial goals. Behavioral economists call this hyperbolic discounting. It's basically our tendency to grab a smaller, immediate reward rather than wait for a much bigger one later. The bottom line is that your brain fundamentally disrespects the future. Why? Because the future is abstract and uncertain. Today is real. So your biological software will always prioritize concrete, immediate safety over some massive but delayed payoff down the road. Let's actually put a number on this. If I offered you $100 right now, or a guaranteed $120 a year from now, almost everyone takes the 100 today. Think about that for a second. That's a guaranteed 20% return just for waiting a year. Any smart investor would absolutely jump at that yield. But your evolutionary biology usually screams, take the money now, because that future value gets heavily discounted by your brain's desperate need for immediate, tangible security. And guys, this is exactly why the math of compound interest doesn't motivate us. Sure, we know the logic. Save early, have millions in 30 years. But the abstract idea of millions of dollars 3 decades from now, it just cannot biologically compete with the intense, tangible pleasure of instant spending today. It can't compete with the smell of new leather and the thrill of revving the engine on a brand new car right this second. Okay, section 3, meet your future self. Now that we see the biological trap we're stuck in, let's look at our first major trick to bypass it, by bridging the empathy gap. This is fascinating. Neuroscientists actually put people in fMRI scanners and ask them to think about themselves, and then ask them to think about a stranger. Different parts of the brain lit up, as you'd expect. But here is the crazy part. When they asked people to think about their future 65-year-old selves, their brains lit up exactly the same way as when they thought about a total stranger. This perfectly explains why it's so hard to save. Why on earth would you sacrifice a guaranteed dopamine hit right now for someone your brain literally views as a stranger you've never met? So how do we fix this? You have to make your future self feel completely real to you today. Studies actually show that folks who look at age-progressed photos of themselves save way more for retirement. You have to bridge that gap. First, go look at one of those aging filters on your phone. Next, maybe even give your future self a nickname. And finally, really vividly visualize their daily life. Where do they live? What are they doing? You'll quickly realize their entire well-being rests in your hands. Once you do this, saving completely shifts. It stops feeling like this annoying sacrifice and actually becomes a profound act of self-love. Moving to section 4, gamify your savings. This trick uses a clever bit of chemical substitution to feed our brain's endless hunger for instant gratification. Look, if your brain is screaming at you for a dopamine hit, you can't just ignore it. That never works. Instead, you have to gamify the process so that keeping your money feels just as rewarding as blowing it at the mall. The secret is to take massive, scary goals, like, say, saving 10 grand, and chop them down into tiny, weekly micro milestones. By doing this, you are actively hijacking your primitive reward system. You're retraining your brain to actually feel pleasure when you accumulate capital instead of when you spend it. And here is a really practical way to execute that hijack. Use a physical action. Go print out a visual tracker, like a simple paper grid with 100 blank squares. Every single time you transfer, say $50 into savings, you take a real marker and physically color in one of those squares. I know it sounds ridiculously simple, but the physical act of filling in that box gives your brain an immediate, tangible dopamine hit. It totally short-circuits your biological resistance to waiting. All right, section 5, automate and hide it. This is our final trick, and honestly, it's the ultimate failsafe for when your willpower inevitably runs out. We like to call this the logic of invisibility. Think about it. If you know for a fact that your own evolutionary biology is actively working against you every single day, the smartest thing you can do is just step off the battlefield entirely. If your savings are sitting right there in your main checking account every time you log in, your brain is going to find an excuse to spend it. Oh, I deserve a treat, right? You have to make sure your scarcity trigger can't obsess over money it literally can't see. So here is the exact step-by-step to make your money invisible. First, set up your savings to automatically transfer out the very second your paycheck hits your account. Second, send that money to a completely different bank, not just a different account, a different bank entirely. And third, and I cannot stress this enough, delete that new bank's app off your phone and literally take some scissors to the debit card they mail you. Why go to all that trouble? Because you are purposefully creating extreme friction. If you get a sudden craving to buy something online at 2 in the morning, you literally won't have the card numbers to pull it off. By using these strict automation steps to make your wealth invisible, it grows silently in the background, completely bypassing your biological urge to spend. Out of sight, perfectly out of mind. So, at the end of the day, saving money isn't a test of your morality. It's a test of your biological engineering. The question isn't whether your brain wants to spend. Of course it does. The real question is, how are you going to outsmart it? Will you finally introduce yourself to your future self? Maybe start gamifying your deposits with a physical tracker? Or are you going to lean fully into the logic of invisibility? The choice is entirely up to you. But remember, if you do nothing, your ancient brain wins by default. If you actually take action today, just imagine how entirely different your financial reality could be a year from now.